to item 13, acting in reverse. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. Welcome team. I'll give you a bit longer, Graham, to get under the table. Sorry.
Kia ora ngā tātou. Thank you for the opportunity through the Chair to present our quarterly report, our second quarterly report for this financial year, covering the period from 1 October to the 31st of December 2017. I will take the report as read and just note a couple of points. As has been raised before around monitoring the quarterly spend. The spend that this year is at 30, for this second quarter was 30% of the 9,092,000 at 2,764,000. To ensure full spend for the budget for the year, we continue to work closely with project holders and to be able to report project milestones. And to date, we are also identified 4 groups that we are working closely with in order to achieve that. And another group that has identified an underspend because of the impact of the issue around the Kauri dieback had on the delivery of that project. So really the report just highlights the fact that we are continuing to work closely with our project holders in order to not only be able to report on spend but also to better report on the outcomes that they were seen to achieve.
Okay, thank you, Makura. Graham, do you want to add?
No, didn't add to that.
All right. Well, we have questions. Hunter Flapana, yep.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on 4. And I remember the last time we ended up having an update around Tō Takatini was around Auckland Council whānau being part of the process and buying into it. So I've got a concern around 4 and what's been said here. I mean, we continue to pursue better project status information from project holders. I mean, it spells to me that there's still some reluctance by the Auckland whānau and in particular possibly directors that are under the 4 wellbeing. So I just wanted to see, and I asked this particular question, I'm going to ask it again, and it's around the spend and outcomes. And how is that progressing? Because to me, 4, and it's been highlighted later on in the agenda, that it's not progressing, which concerns me. When we only have about 30-odd% spend, you know, the outcomes and trying to get the Auckland whānau, you know, on board and buying into it concerns me. It really does. And that in particular is around the 2 reports. So my question is around, are they on board or not? And if not, how are things progressing? Please.
Kia ora, Councillor Flapana, through the Chair. Well, firstly, I think that, you know, the Tō Takatini project was envisaged 2015, delivering Māori outcomes across the council group, including the CCOs, and you know, so the first year of that was a big aggregation of a lot of projects from across council, and we've gone through a transformational outcome phase, as I called it, in that we looked at what projects were actually delivering transformational outcomes based on a set of criteria that were developed in council, and you know, that's been implemented over the 16-17 year and is still in progress at the moment, and so these things take time. We've had significant progress, I think, with the CCOs coming on to the Te Tua Takatini project, monitoring machine, if you like, of what we do. Remembering that Te Tua Takatini is a reporting mechanism back to Council of Māori outcomes, particularly transformational outcomes, and so that's been a positive amount of progress, I suppose, with the CCOs, and as we are making with the rest of Council. You know, these things aren't happening at a rapid pace. I will, concede to that, but it's not that there's not the appetite. I think the appetite in Council for Māori outcomes is definitely there. It's getting ourselves organised around strategic priorities that have been identified through the various processes that Council runs, and with IMSB, various reports that we have from there, the Mana Whenua Kaitiaki Forum feeding into that, the Auckland Plan and the long-term plan process, which is underway at the moment. So there is a significant amount of work undertaken identifying what those things are, and can fill out a bit more on my report. But, progress is being made. Sure, we'd all like it to be faster, but it is being made. It's not something that's going backwards on us.
Okay, Chair, just through you, just want to ask our CEO a question. Is that okay with you through you,
I was
Chair?
going to allow Steve, ask Stephen if he wanted to comment at the end, but that's fine, relevant.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, the question is, Stephen, is there anything from your perspective that we could do better to at least not escalate so we make mistakes, but just escalate? Because I did, and I think you were here when I originally asked the question around ELT and sponsors of Tua Takatini, and just buying into the whole concept. So that's the question to you.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. I think Sir Graham missed an important meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, where Phil Wilson has grabbed the reporting of Te Tua Takatini has been going into several places, so we're trying hard to shrink the amount of reporting, make it meaningful, and I think the IMSB, if I've understood their concerns correctly, we've struggled to get chief executives to come and demonstrate the commitment to the program. So we would ideally like to see one or two of our CCO chief executives joining us at a major reporting milestone and really giving you the comfort that we are committed to the program. And I think certainly with the transition last year from Brett O'Reilly to Nick Hill, that change, and then from David to Shane, we have lost a bit of momentum, but I think you'll see by mid-year, Nick Hill's really happy with where they've got to around looking at Māori business and the Māori economy, and that I think they have nutted out what they really want to chase with Māori, and I think this will see the same sort of leadership from Shane at AT, who wants to take the Auckland Transport Organisation on a bit of a journey to having a much more visible commitment to what we're trying to do.
Stephen, my question was more around ELT, not the CCOs. As I've heard, the CCOs are actually coming on board quite well. It was more around the Auckland Council as an ELT. That was the question.
Sorry, I've off track on that.
Okay.
Through you, Chair. So from our point of view, the CCOs deliver 70% of service delivery, and we did have an issue with not a lot of visibility back here from them, and I think a couple of members of my ELT have actually been the ones that have turned up at IMSB GB meetings, and it's the CCOs that have been missing. So we're trying to make sure that we're all in the same waka, rowing it, paddling it in the same direction.
Okay, kia ora. I reserve the right to speak with the item chair, not unless I can just say my little 2 seconds worth.
Yep.
Say my 2 seconds worth. The reason I've asked these questions, Chair, is because I attended a a Māori LTP session at Auckland Plan, attended it, and the comments coming from that hui were not complimentary in regards to the report. So hence my questions, at least I can go back to those that spoke to me at Manukau around their concerns. I can go back to them and sort of mention, no, what you're hearing is wrong, that there is some very good progress that is happening around Tō Takatini, but also around the independent reports that have been done, which is our second, went into the second one. So that's my comment, and thank you. Tēnā korua.
Thank you, Alf.
Add to that, I think what's been really important to acknowledge about the portfolio is around the fact that establishing a transformational program in terms of being able to identify where the investment is happening to achieve Māori outcomes has required a lot of reconsideration around where that priority focus should be, and then how you identify what you're actually attempting to achieve in the community, and then how within the organisation you put into place the appropriate reporting and monitoring. And those are things that we've been learning as we've been going through the development of the portfolio, and it's some of the critical issues that the executive leadership group are now coming to grips with, and we have an active participation at that level from the chief executives of the CCOs as well as the directors from within the council. It's taken a bit of time, but I think that investment is going to start generating much more positive reporting in our next financial year, where we're able to actually implement a much more streamlined process around our reporting and monitoring.
Ka pai, ngā mihi.
Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Graham. It's paragraph 16 relating to local boards. You said that 19 local boards have identified 100 projects targeting Māori outcomes. What's the 2 boards who are not engaging?
I don't have that detail, unfortunately,
But you know,
but I can provide that to you.
Do you know, Graham?
It's not needed.
I don't have that. A report was done on our behalf that was analysed all the business plans that were produced by the 21 local boards. Of that, only 19 were identified to have a number of initiatives that were looking to seek Māori outcomes. I don't have that detail,
Last
but I
time
can
there was only
provide
one,
that
so
later.
we're going backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Perhaps they could be reported offline. I mean, we don't necessarily have to have a name and shame.
Name and shame.
Well, that's what I mean. We could maybe do that offline. Okay, that's
No,
a
don't name and
relevant
shame.
question. Though.
Don't
It
name
will be,
and
and I'm not sure. We'll come back to you. So, Member Taipere.
I think this is worship wanted to speak.
Well, we have Councillor Cashman
Okay,
and,
okay,
and
no
the
worries.
Mayor after that.
Yeah,
But,
I'll do it. I'll
I
do
don't
it
have the
because
preferential.
I actually asked for item 13 to come ahead of item 12 because item 12, which I consider very positive in the context of the future, I felt it was important that we had context of what's actually happening today in terms of the most recent report we can get, which is up to December. And so, again, you know, the next item is about the way forward, which was based on the findings of audit. And in those findings was about the underspend, the lack of collaboration and the likes. And sadly, for whatever reasons, this current report of Te Toa Takatini does not show much improvement in the context of that. When we look at a half-yearly report with a 30% spend, for whatever the reasons are. And I'm sure there are a bunch of mitigating reasons, but it does leave the question of what's going to happen in the next half of the year come June in terms of the spend that needs to occur in those projects. And so I'm hopeful that the next item is the positive way forward, but I felt that we need to be clear about the current state of affairs in the context of that it is as of 31 December. And then when I look in this report, it talks about different things will be reported in Q1 of 2018-2019. Well, that to me is like nearly 8 months from now. That's, you know, again, that's the July, August, September period that will get reported in October, you know, of the 100 initiatives. And I mean, Councillor Casey raises a question about the 100 initiatives from the local boards. I'd like to know those now, not in October. So, you know, those sorts of things I think are relevant. I just felt that if we went straight into 12 and talked about the audit that had been done probably prior to this quarter, and then got on with that, and then came into this report, I just think we were lacking the context of why we actually have to do that item 12 and get on with it. You know, I'm pleased that Stephen's here as the leader of Te Toa Takatini, in my view, because it always gets put on you two. And I know that you have a function and a role here, but when you look at who makes up the Te Toa Takatini, it is the senior leadership of council and the CCOs, and they need to be here fronting and accountable as well. So I'm pleased that, Stephen, you are here, and others can be here in the future. I'm hopeful because Te Toa Takatini showed in the audit that it was lost in terms of what it does. And I'm hopeful that the plans that we talk about next and things we're talking about are the way out of this kind of area that we're in, and that is insufficient spending on outcomes for Māori. I think, as I said to you before, and you all know, we did an independent assessment by a non-Māori person that said there should be $29 million per annum. We're getting 9, and we're only spending $22 million of it 6 months into the year. So something's seriously wrong. And so rather than kick the tyres and dwell on the past all the time, I'm all about the next item. But I think it's important to know when we make decisions about the next item why we're doing it. And it's to improve what these reports are, to get these reports better and to get the spend better. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything on that, Mr. Chairman, but it's a statement I wanted to make because I just wanted to give a context before we all get into it. I think we should focus obviously on item 12, but bear in mind why we're doing item 12, and it's because of this kind of reportage. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say we will note that the eyes and ears of Auckland Transport are there in the form of Wally Thomas, so I'm sure he's taking that all on board. I'll just say one thing though, which we are underspending, there's no question, Member Tarbury, but if eventually we actually get the outcomes and all the achievements we want and we've still underspent a budget, as Chair of Finance can say, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as we achieve everything we want to achieve. So I'll just pass that on, because I know the Mayor, through his letters of expectation and the direction given at the Appointments and Performance Committee, we are trying to extract greater value. But in the case of this, we are clearly seriously underspending and underinvesting. So I have I think we should have the Mayor next as the President of the Deputy Mayor.
I'll pick up where you left off, Mr. Chair. I've got two questions really. One is underspend, and 30% of the budget, 50% into the year. This seems to be a recurrent pattern. So I guess we need an explanation as to why, when we've got $9 million halfway through the year, we've spent much less than $3 million, and that worries me, because if you're underspending through the first half of the year, I'm just worried that we'll dump a whole lot of money to spend up to the limit at the end without necessarily worrying about effectiveness. And the second thing is about outcomes, and what I'd like to have in these reports. I've got no problem with spending $9 million or whatever the sum might be in the area, but I really want to know that we are analysing how effective our spend is to deliver the results that we're after. And I'm not sure I get a clear picture of that from these reports. So question one, why do we seem to persistently underspend in the first part of the year and still, even on forecast, be underspent for the end of the pattern? And secondly, what sort of independent analysis will we have about what we got from the expenditure of that money in terms of the outcomes we were looking for?
Through the Chair. Previously, outcomes I don't think were part of the reporting system here, so that's been implemented just very recently, and we're, gathering all that information together getting a coherent reporting system across council is a task that needs to be completed, and we're in the process of doing that. As far as underspend for a period, we have got a couple of the projects that are, I suppose, time-bound, like Te Herenga Waka Festival, which is reported in the third quarter. So there's those sorts of things which will slow up. But yeah, there definitely seems to be an underspend over a period of time. It's certainly not an even period of, even spending over the periods that we're reporting. Did you want to comment?
Sorry, and one of the other disciplines that we're hoping to introduce in terms of project management is through the investment group process, so that it's clear right out the beginning what those quarterly budgets are and what the targets are, the outcomes that are expected to be achieved, and as a consequence we're able to do the respective reporting on that, and that is what we were hoping to be able to start modelling in the first quarter of the next financial year.
Thanks, Minister. I'm not really asking for anything from Te Toa Takatini that I wouldn't ask from the rest of council. That is, if there's a systemic reason for underspending, what is that reason and how are we addressing it? And then secondly, at the end of the day, all of us want to know on every dollar that council spends anywhere that we're achieving the purposes for which that money was voted. You know, a dollar spent with no effect is worse than spending $9 million and actually achieving what you might want out of it. And I really would like, Graham, and if I can register it, to get a clear picture of, you know, did what we spent the money and achieve what we were looking for? If not, let's forget that program and find one that will do it. But I don't get a clear impression at the end of the year, we're halfway through this year, of whether we achieved what we set out to do, and I think that's what we all want.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. So that was my second question.
Sorry.
So I think it's important. It's business as usual. We measure the outcomes that we produce through, and what difference does that make? The question I'd have Graham or even Stephen would be, what council does all the time arguably could be transformational to Maori or for anyone else for that matter. Is business as usual, whether it's new sewerage lines, whether it's new systems, whether it's new roading, public transport, parks? Is there a percentage of that counted in as outcomes for Maori, or this is completely separate to Te Toa Takatini business?
This is relatively separate detail. Those projects which are benefiting all the community of Auckland or Tāmaki are not allocated against Māori outcomes as such. But to add to that, you know, one of the things we're developing a tool is the performance measurement framework, which will pick up these things. And so, based around the Māori responsiveness plans around council and across the CCOs, that they identify what outcomes those areas of council are pursuing, and the performance measurement framework, which has been put in place, starting to be put in place now, is going to pick up that reported. So we will be reporting to Toa Takatini as part of that, and there will be Māori outcomes reported right across council as a result of that. But that'll take some time for us to implement. And
it's complicated, yeah. So just to that point, Mr Chair, last night up at Silverdale at the Marae there, where there's a partnership between the local board, local iwi, and what had been delivered there was an outstanding marae using ex-Ministry of Education buildings, beautifully done up, you know, a real classy place. I really liked it. And the atmosphere was fantastic. So that was a great partnership between the local iwi and council. And to me, that's a good way to actually achieve really good results, because it's all very well for us to say to iwi, this is what you need, or this is what you should be doing. But it's that partnership approach where you actually get physical delivery at the end of the day rather than just the hui is probably a greater outcome.
Right, well, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. We have a mover as Member Tapari, and Hanari will second. No further comments, so I'll put that resolution. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Against, thank you. We will now go back to the future, so to speak, and then item number 12.